Hello, everyone, and welcome to Every Day is Draft Day, Episode 9. I'm your host, as always, Dan Turner, and joining me, as always, is the probably very tired Steffi Smalls. What's up, Steph?
What's up? Am I tired? I just had a flight at 4 a.m., but I'm good. I'm excited to talk football. It's Thursday. We have a fun matchup tonight, too. So it's been an interesting week with some of this news. So I'm excited to talk some ball.
Very, very interesting. We're going to have some debuts this week. So let's get started on all that. First topic, of course, is the news that Matt Nagy has done the right thing finally and proclaimed that Justin Fields will be the starting quarterback going forward. So with that news, and with Allen Robinson kind of struggling this year for where he was drafted, and Darnell Mooney having a breakout game last week, how do you see that offense playing out with Fields under center for the rest of the season?
I don't know. I'm glad that they get. I was trying to find when I was on the plane was that tweet, and it's actually really sad, and I think about it a lot, where it was a picture of Andy Dalton, and the Bears Twitter account tweeted QB1, and then he did an interview, and it was like, oh, yeah, I came here because they told me I'm going to be the starter and I wanted to go to a system that was going to start me. Poor Andy Dalton's feelings. Poor Andy Dalton. I feel bad for that guy, but it's time. Justin Fields at this point with that system, with how the Bears were looking, it's time to just throw him to the Wolves, let him develop, let him get used to it. Hopefully Nagy can make the adjustments that need to happen. But, I think, again, like Mooney looked great. This is good for Mooney. Hopefully we get more out of Allen Robinson. I know it's very painful for a lot of people, but again, they did, they're coming off an easy matchup. So it'll be nice to see what happens moving forward. But again, Justin Fields now, I hadn't been starting him, but he's definitely someone that I can throw into super flex now.
Yeah, I think I agree there. I think it's, everyone kind of knew that it was pretty irresponsible of him to go back to Dalton with Fields there. I mean, you drafted Fields to be the future, and you might as well. I mean, no one expects the Bears to win the Super Bowl this year, so you might as well get him the experience he needs to succeed. I don't really trust Matt Nagy to develop a system to make him succeed. I think that's pretty much going to be the next coach's job, because I think Matt Nagy is an idiot. But to be fair, they did promise Andy Dalton to be the starter when he signed there. They just never said how long he'd be the starter. So technically they were right. He did start a couple of
right.
games.
So technically at that point they were right. And lucky for Nagy, he is not the dumbest coach of the week, so it's okay.
No.
There's other issues going on, so it's cool. Nagy, you're off the hot seat for a little bit,
for a week.
But it'll be interesting too, because even Trey Lance, with whatever's happening with Garoppolo, are we going to start seeing these two guys? I would love to see more Lance, as much as I want him to be benched a little bit longer. I thought it was better for him, but it's exciting. It's a new era. These are two guys, that had so much raw talent too coming in. So I'm actually really excited. I hope the Bears don't, I hope Nagy's for my New York Giants sake, given that we have their first pick. But again, there's so many good players over there. I want to see those guys play, and it's been very sedated for a little bit here.
Yeah. The news, that David Montgomery is going to be out a couple of weeks, and everyone was rushing to spend all their fab on Damian Williams. A thing I didn't really notice on people talking about was, if Montgomery's out, do they call more design runs now for Fields? Does he become kind of like that?
See how we rush, and this is like a thing that we're seeing. You're rushing without seeing how it's gonna play out. And does that just mean, can they air the ball out more? Are they able to get Robinson involved? Like, there is more pieces to this puzzle. I don't know that necessarily means just because Montgomery looked phenomenal. It was so heartbreaking to see him go down, because he looked really, really good last week. So just because he's down doesn't mean that next player up is going to end up filling those shoes entirely, because the game plan can change.
Right, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see, like, going forward with, how it's distributed between Robinson and Mooney, how the rushing game works out. So we'll see, going forward. The first game is against the Raiders. So, I mean, that's a pretty good matchup. Should source some points. I mean, the Raiders defense is decent, but it's not like a world beater. So
yeah,
it's a good game for him to get his feet wet.
For sure. Yeah. I'm excited to actually play him in Superflex. It's like, I feel like in some leagues I was drafting him like super hopeful, like, oh, they won't actually start Andy Dalton that long. Like, it's fine. 1-2 weeks, no big deal. So I'm ready to at least use, that draft position that I did get him at, because I probably took him in a couple leagues a little bit earlier, being a little ambitious there. So I'm excited to get him in some of these lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually, I drafted him as my QB3 in Superflex, but I'm putting him in as my second QB with
Yeah.
Mahomes. So, even if he doesn't do great, at least Mahomes can cover it. But it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see like how he does. But that's what you drafted him for. You drafted him because he's that Konami kind of quarterback, and you hope he does well for you in fantasy in that rushing and passing role. So the time's
Right.
here, so we just have to see how he does, going forward.
Right.
Speaking of rushing quarterbacks, who would have expected, Sam Darnold to have 5 rushing touchdowns this year? I mean, if anyone would have said that at the beginning of the year, he would have called him a liar and moved along. But here we are. Darnold is a top 5 right now fantasy QB. Do you think that he can sustain that level of play? Does the injury to McCaffrey coming back soon kind of you know curtail that rushing touchdown dependency that he has? And can he,
I
is
don't
he a good
know.
enough passer with a good enough system
Like,
to do that, or do you think that's just like it's over for him now?
well, one I think the Panthers have very quietly built a very, very pretty roster. And they're
Mhm.
continuing to add people. They are not done. You can tell that they are actively trying to make this system better while it's already good. I think that they could not have won more in this Darnold trade. I mean, this goes to show a young QB needs a system that can flourish him and support him. And Sam Darnold is a perfect example of that. I think I'm sure the Jets are not kicking themselves and he's out of, Gase's claws, but it's so awesome to see. Is he still leading the league in rushing touchdowns? Or if
I
he's
think so.
not, he has, at least 5 at that point. And I think that, the averaging, I think he's at like 24.4, whatever it is, fantasy points per game. I don't know that he's going to ever drop really out of that to be out of the question. So I was high on Darnold. I was excited for him. I didn't have him in my top 10. And I can promise you anyone that says they did, I think is lying. I had him higher than most people did, but no way did I think that this was actually in, that it was in the realm of possibilities for him. I think, I could see him finishing in the top 10. It's crazy. I can't believe we're saying that.
No. Yeah, at the beginning of the year, he was not on anyone's radar. Even like a top 15. If you said top 15, people would have, made that a stretch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's actually outscoring right now Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Carr, Herbert, and these were guys that Aaron Rodgers. These were guys you were taking in Superflex in the first round. In Scott
Yeah.
Fishbowl and everything. People were running all over themselves. It was like a Black Friday sale to get these quarterbacks, and you got this guy that people drafted, and in the later rounds that's outperforming all of them.
Yeah.
I think that I said it yesterday. That I think Carolina is building kind of a dark horse like Super Bowl team. I mean, they have if McCaffrey can get back healthy, they have all the makings of a decent quality team, and that division isn't. With Tampa Bay's obviously in that division, they're probably they're obviously going to the playoffs. But other than that, the Saints aren't looking that great, and the Falcons are garbage. So I mean, they could contend for a wild card spot. They have DJ Moore, Terrence Marshall's turned out to be a decent pick.
Yeah.
Their offensive line is kind of iffy, but that can gel during the season. And they just traded for Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah.
Too.
And there was
So,
a lot of changes over there too. It's amazing that they've been able to just acclimate very well. It just
mhm.
works. I mean, they are doing beautifully. I get excited to watch their games. They even have, they have Chuba Hubbard over there too. So even, you have CMC, maybe CMC, even all these elite running backs, you should count them out for 1 to 3 games regardless. Like that's just how running backs are. The league abuses them, and they're more likely to miss games than to play a full season if they're in this, these top 10 that we talk about, right?
Right.
So if he misses a game or two, you still have someone that can come in, and then you have the rushing upside. Darnold, they're still a threat. I mean, with or without him, obviously it's a massive threat with him there. But again, they have a very easy way to fill the hole that doesn't damage the team.
Right. Exactly. And I think a lot of people were high on Hubbard coming out. I mean, he dropped a little bit during draft time for some reason, but the fact that he was drafted to Carolina, I mean, he got that. He got to start with CMC out. He's a good back. People were excited about him before the draft, and yeah, he went to a bad spot for fantasy value, but with CMC being hurt, that's a great system for him, and the coach there has developed a system that fits Dan Darnold perfectly. Do I expect him to to average like the 20 whatever touchdowns rushing he's supposed to be averaging so far for the rest of the year? No, obviously not. I don't think that's realistic for him. But even if he rushes for 1 touchdown a week, that's a significant bump in his fantasy points that will keep him in the top 10 because with there are enough quarterbacks that aren't doing that great where it's not out of the realm of possibility for him to easily slip into like that 8, 9, 10 spot where he currently resides and just stay there. Obviously I don't think Lamar is going to be back and Dak's going to improve too. But other than that, there really isn't any QB that comes to mind where that's performing as consistently as Darnold is, and he's turned DJ Moore into fantasy superstar.
Right. I'm even looking at it now. I mean, we're talking through these weeks of play. He is currently outscoring Josh Allen, Stafford, Jackson Wilson, Prescott, Cousins, Herb. Like, we're talking the guys that you drafted very early on. All of them, Burrow, Rodgers, Tannehill. Like, it's crazy, actually. Even Carson Wentz. Darnold is one of those guys. And, obviously I can't make it through a show without talking about the New York Giants. But obviously Daniel Jones, too. It's like everyone gets a bad taste in their mouth. And then you forget the talent that is sitting there. And it's like, even if the team isn't good, is there still upside there? Whereas some of these other guys, if the team struggles, what happens? So it's very interesting. I'm happy for Darnold. What an awesome, what a comeback story. And could he be considered? I wish he could be considered for like comeback player of the year because he low key is done with Gase and it's like totally the biggest comeback ever. I think he's doing phenomenal.
Yeah. If comeback player of the year wasn't just whoever got injured last year and is now playing full season,
he technically did. He was seeing ghosts. So
definitely not seeing ghosts in Carolina. But at the start of the season, if you went into week 5 and you said that Darnold and Daniel Jones would be quarterback 8 and 9, no one that you'd be certifiably insane and people would discredit you immediately.
Yeah, it's like when you go on my Twitter all off season, that's what happens. They call you insane. They think you're crazy.
Yeah, but you credit to you. You stuck to Daniel Jones, and everyone's going to yell at you for being a homer, obviously, which is everything that happens.
Yeah, of course. But and he's going to throw an interception this weekend, and everyone is going to lose their minds, and it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to care. I was looking it up, not to go too off topic, but he had last year, the ratio at this time between touchdowns and interceptions was 2 to 5. And right now he is 4 to 1. And you could argue, like most of Giants Nation is, that he did throw that at a Hail Mary. It wasn't like the old Daniel Jones. So we're talking like a huge difference.
Right. It's a huge discrepancy. And the same thing with Hurts. I was saying all offseason how Hurts was going to be a good fantasy QB. I wasn't saying, he's going to be a world beater as a real life QB, but he's QB3 right now because, he has that rushing. And people were like, well, you're just an Eagles fan. What the hell do you know? But just because
also, like, no one watches the game more intently than a fan,
us,
too,
right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah. And you made a great point before where people, get that, like, where the team sucks or like he had a bad year last year, like Jones did. But like, just because even now, if you have a bad like NFL game, it doesn't necessarily translate into a bad fantasy game. Like, garbage time points matter, like, rushing matters. Like, so, if Daniel Jones throws like 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions and loses a fumble, it's still a decent fantasy game if he also rushes for like 60 yards, like he does in every single one of his runs.
Huge misconception, like totally huge misconception. Even that's why I always tread lightly where it's like, oh, it's a hard match. Like, I get it's a hard matchup, but is that running back or that wide receiver going to be the only way that they stay in the game? Like, it doesn't matter. They could lose by I don't care how much, but if it's volume, if they're getting the volume to produce for me, I don't care what their matchup looks like.
Yeah. A tough matchup in real life NFL terms doesn't necessarily equal a bad matchup in fantasy.
Exactly.
Garbage time points matter no matter what.
Yeah.
All right. So for this next topic, we are going to be in a fight because this is the Cordell Patterson point of the show where you need to explain your case about why you think that he doesn't continue the streak he's on, and I'm going to rebuttal that. So you can go first.
I don't have a great argument. Okay, that's what I have to say. I don't have a great one. 5 touchdowns on 45 touches. The only person I know that he was on their radar. I think they had him at RB 32 going into the season. That's the only person that I know. One person that even had him on their radar. Mm-hmm. The guy is finishing. He finished RB1 last week. I just think that system doesn't have an identity yet. Apparently, I think half the teams have identity crises, but
Yes.
Calvin Ridley hasn't really gotten involved. Like, he has, but not to Calvin Ridley extent. Kyle Pitts, what is going on? We could have a whole podcast on that. But I just think with Patterson, maybe he is. If he's that, honestly, everyone go for it. Like, if that's your thing, I had him on a bunch of benches. I tried to pick him up. I'm not like going out and spending half my, like, I'm not doing that because I think there's so much more football to play that I don't want to put all, I saw crazy. I was looking at Yahoo. I'm seeing people trade. Ready? These are the trades I saw.
Yeah.
Patterson for Saquon straight up, for CD Lamb straight up, for McLaurin straight up, for Daniel Jones straight up, you name it. People are giving away just like Aaron Jones straight up, like guys that you have relied on or are aware that they're going to get a lot. I saw, what did I see too? I think someone gave AJ Brown and Julio. Like, guys, what are we doing here? Like, I get it. You're excited. I'm excited too. I love that they found a way to use this guy. It's awesome. I just think I need maybe like two. I have trust issues, I guess. That's my problem.
That's what it is. Yeah. And you have a great point. It's like a very thin line. Like, this year, especially, there's a lot of like name players that have not produced like they were drafted for, AJ Brown, Allen Robinson, players like that, where you spent a high draft capital on them and, they haven't really done much of anything. And people are panicking. They see that Patterson's, running back 3 right now. And like Darnold and Jones, you never would have guessed that Cordell Patterson, the backup, gadget player for Atlanta, is running back 3 currently. But it's how long do you wait on those, on the Robinsons and the Browns before, like you said, like, okay, like, he's just not producing, and you trust, the players that maybe don't have big names but are putting the points up. Do I think that Cordell Patterson is going to score 3 touchdowns a game every week? No, I don't. But he's getting consistent work. He's getting 7 targets the last 3 games and at least 6 carries a game, and he's producing.
And that offense what I like about this? You just convinced me too. Is I always am yelling about this use and abuse thing. They're using him like exactly the way, knock on wood, that you preserve a player's longevity. They can use him more, but I'm saying like he is not getting. He's had 5 touchdowns and 45 touches. He's barely getting touched. On the field. So that's how you keep a guy healthy. Like, you want to use a guy like that, he'll play in the league for 45 years. Like, but then you see CMC and what they did when the week he got hurt. They're using him every single play. He's going to get hurt if you do that. It's just that's how it works. So maybe there's something to it. Maybe I will swallow my words. I'm not totally out. I just am not like going crazy.
Yeah, no. I don't get me wrong. I don't expect him to be, running back 3 the rest of the year. I don't think that's realistic. But he's only getting 30% of the work, and he's averaging like 18 points.
Crazy.
So even if he goes down, but still gets a little more, even if he gets like 40% of the work, because Mike Davis isn't impressing anybody. Let's be honest. And like you said, the Falcons don't really have an offensive identity. They have Ridley. Pitts hasn't panned out the way people wanted. If Patterson is going to be part of the game plan there, at some point you just have to like ignore the name that it's attached to him and look at what he's producing.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, so this week we get the return of one Josh Gordon, signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, which of course everyone went bananas for because it's the Kansas City Chiefs, and if they signed me and you to the Kansas City Chiefs, we'd probably be picked up in fantasy at some point. Do you think that Josh Gordon is going to be fantasy relevant? 1, and 2, if he is, at what point will he be?
I love Josh Gordon. Like, and the shame of the Chiefs, they always pick up these guys, and like, I feel like some of these teams, they're just known to do this. And, the dude was averaging like nearly 20 yards per catch when he was on the Seahawks and the Patriots. Like, he is a big receiver. I love him, and I have stayed away from my phone because I know I'm gonna try to do it. Good for the Chiefs. They got another weapon too. Like, come on, this kind of stinks. Like, from a league perspective for all of us, because if Josh Gordon, and all the reports are like he looks phenomenal. then again, they did say this about Tebow, so let's
Yeah.
tread lightly with reports. But if you have a spot and you can just like quietly go and pick him up and put him in your pocket just in case, like I would do it. If we're getting Josh Gordon, like I'm all in.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a stretch to say he's going to be like, prime Cleveland
Yeah,
Gordon.
no.
I don't think we're getting that at this point. But if he can even be, let's say, like 70, 75% of what he was in Cleveland in that offense that really doesn't have like a number two receiver that sticks, that's rotating between like Demarcus Robinson and Michael Hartman. Mm-hmm. If he can solidify that wide receiver 2 spot, that's insane amount of value for someone that's basically, is basically free for you. Yeah. I know everyone, it's kind of like the CH effect where as soon as you're putting the Chiefs, everyone goes insane and thinks you're going to be the greatest, fantasy player in the world. And I don't really expect that from Gordon. But yeah. I think that, as like a wide receiver 4 or 5 on your team, he has that upside where if he can, revert to some of his, like 80% of his old talent and stuff. Yeah. And he hasn't been in the league in a while, then absolutely he's definitely worth,
for sure. And teams like this, so like the Chiefs in Tampa Bay, like if they sign a player and it's a player that that name and it's a name that you remember, like they're going on the field. Like that's it. Like I know he'll be on the field at some point. I was reading something before we got on. He could maybe make a debut even. That's what they're now talking about. They're flirting with that idea. I just think teams like this, like, expect him to be on the field. So whether he fails at it, that's one thing, but he's going to play at some point.
Yeah. I think a good comp for him would probably be like Antonio Brown on Tampa, where like he's signed to Tampa. He's like the big name, he was the dynasty wide receiver 1 for a number of years, but that's not the role he's going to be playing. And he's not playing in Tampa. He's the 3 there behind, Goodwin and Evans. And that's kind of like where I kind of see projecting Gordon to be like, he's going to be the number 3 target there at some point behind Kelsey and Hill. And if he can nail down that role and give that consistent wide receiver 2 production on the Chiefs, that's a role that comes with a lot of targets and stuff that are spread around everywhere else. So if you can concentrate those targets on him, he's going to be a viable fantasy contributor.
Yeah, for sure. And especially towards like the end of this season too, like when you start preserving your players, that when you like are approaching playoffs, which we know the Chiefs are going to make some kind of playoff run. Not that I think they're necessarily going to go to the Super Bowl, but obviously they're a great team. So do they start preserving some health, and then do they start playing him more? And then those late weeks and you're winning playoffs and stuff, it's like those are the type of guys that you love to have, is these vintage guys that end up doing very well.
Right. Yeah. So I think we're in agreement that if you have the space, especially with like we talked about before, where there are some players that just aren't performing like you thought they were, take a chance on this guy. He has a bunch of upside, and you definitely have some space on your bench depending on how big your leagues are. Yeah. Add him. See what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
If he doesn't do anything, just drop him. He's basically free right now.
Right. Totally.
All right. So switching gears on receivers, we're going to go with Stephon Diggs, who people drafted highly. It's the theme of the show is people drafted highly that aren't producing. But Diggs has kind of a bounce back game last week, 114 yards. He has a favorable schedule coming up. He averaged over 10 targets for the year. Do you expect Diggs to? I think he's wide receiver 19 right now. Do you expect Diggs to bounce back into that top, 5-10 receiver that he was drafted to be, or do you think that he continues around this like wide receiver 15 to 20 for the rest of the year?
And like on my to-do list is I have to watch. I didn't get a chance to watch the Bills game, but here's my thing: is this more on maybe like Josh Allen and the offense and less about Diggs? Because it seems like maybe there's like a little dysfunction and they're starting to put it together, and like it's almost like they just had to warm up a little bit, and now maybe we're gonna see them heating up. Like I'm not freaking out about Stephon Diggs the way that I'm maybe freaking out a little bit more about guys like Allen Robinson and Ayuk. Like that's a different type of freak out. This is more like, I know it's there for the Bills. I think that they just were kind of dusting off some rusty pieces there. Not that they're rusty, but it wasn't the dynamic Bills that we expected to see. Even like Josh Allen, where he's falling in fantasy too. So I think it's more, I don't blame Diggs as much as I blame maybe like Josh Allen and the surrounding cast.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that Diggs. It's not like Diggs like lost his talent
No.
from last year. He's obviously still the same receiver. I just think they're including Dawson Knox more in the red zone, so he isn't getting as many touchdowns, and they're trying to run with Moss and Singletary a little more too. So that's the opportunity that he isn't getting. I think that they're recalibrating to where we expected them to be at the beginning of the year. I just think that we expect them to be, you know, last year's Bills without missing a beat immediately.
Yeah.
Like they were
And you have
expected
to
to.
remember too, last year they basically had a non-existent tight end position and like an occasional running game. Like it
Right.
was really, that's not, this is a different Bills because they're adding in some more pieces. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's definitely playing a part. So maybe they're just trying to figure it out. Again, this like me thinking Everett has an identity crisis. I think that they're figuring out their identity and just everything's going to be okay. We can chill out. I'm sure the Bills are going to be just fine. This is a big test for them this upcoming week.
Right. Everyone needs to take a deep breath. It's going to be
Yeah.
okay. I know everyone's on pins and needles and freaking out everything, but Diggs is someone I don't think you really have to worry about. I think that they trying to balance more. Josh Allen is in the leading rusher, trying to
Yeah.
include a running game and actually including Dawson Knox and even Emmanuel Sanders. That he's getting some end zone targets as well. So
Yeah.
all those things are contributing to Diggs not getting all of them. So they're just
Right. And
trying to
I like
balance
I'll
it
get
out.
text messages and it'll be like, okay, so should I should I trade DeAndre Hopkins for I'm like, no, you should not trade DeAndre Hopkins for a crappy wide receiver that's barely gonna play and like the third running back on a team. Like, no, you should not trade guys that you put so much like value into when you were
Mm-hmm.
drafting and that have that ceiling. So
Right.
guys can have a slow start. It's okay. Please do not panic. Like there's other guys you can panic about that you
Right.
drafted later on. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Darius Slayton, if you made that mistake, that was a mistake from the beginning, and he's not going to ever produce for you. But please do not freak out about like Stephon Diggs being wide receiver
No.
19. It's going to be okay.
Yes. But Brandon Ayuk, that's someone you can be nervous about because
Definitely time to start. I mean, what did he? I was looking on the plane. Where did he fall? I mean, something crazy. It was insane. 60. I don't even remember. I don't even know where it is. I think he must have been below Tony. But I mean, yeah, wide receiver 91.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my God. Like now, like you should panic. Yes.
yeah,
You should definitely, absolutely 100% be panicking.
yeah. He has six catches on the year.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, it's
That's
definitely it's
bad.
definitely
That's
definitely
ugly.
definitely
Ew.
penny time. I'm not gonna say I told you so to everybody, but I told
Yeah,
you so.
well, I wish you told me that a little bit sooner.
Well, I'm sorry. I was saying it all season. I was like, Ayuk's gonna be the best. Like, no, Ayuk was good last year because Debo and Kittle were hurt. As soon as
Yeah,
they come back, he is not going to
I
reach. I obviously
know.
didn't
And I
expect him to.
underestimated Debo. I'll admit that's one of my, not that I didn't know he was great, but like
Right,
I think I just was expecting him to have a bigger role that
right.
he obviously is not going to get. And I don't think that they plan on, I think there is no intention of them to get him more involved.
No, no, especially him sitting the first week healthy. I was like, oh, this is. I obviously didn't expect him to, not be used at all. I just expected him to take a little step back from where people were picking him. But the fact that he's not
Yeah.
being like Shanahan obviously hates him, something
He hates him. Yeah.
I did not see coming at
Like
all.
I don't know what he did
I
to
don't.
piss him off, but he's pissed.
He must have like I don't know, like kicked a puppy or something.
Yeah, he did something for sure. Like spit
Egregious.
in his coffee. I don't know what he
Something.
did.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
most creative I can come up with at this like right now with no
That's
sleep.
fine.
I'm sure I'll get creative. I'll
Yeah.
come up with a whole tweet. Look out for it later of possible things that Ayuk did to Shanahan to get him this upset.
Yes. That's something we look forward to. This is the jet lag, but it's a good answer though. Spin the coffee is a good one. All right, everyone. That'll do it for this week. Hopefully, we were a little bit more positive than last time. Hope everyone enjoyed. We try not to be as depressing as last time, so hopefully we accomplished that. So, Steph, where can everyone find you?
You guys can find me at Steffi Smalls on all the platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Match.com. What else did we say last week?
eHarmony.
Harmon at farmers.com, MySpace,
LinkedIn,
all the platforms, but primarily just the Twitter, Instagram, Spotify.
yes.
I have an episode of Smalls Talks Balls 2 coming out this week. And we have we're pumping out tons of content over at Champions Round. And that's it. I'm excited for Thursday night football. I'm definitely going to need a drink tonight.
Yeah, definitely check out that Smalls Talk Balls. She has some great some guests coming up.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out. And it's Smalls with 3
fun.
L's, not 2, 3. You can find me on Twitter at EagleDanFF. I'm also doing all Champions Round stuff. I do this show every week with Steph. I have a waiver, buy, sell, and weekly preview articles come out pretty much every week consistently. So check out all those. I hope everyone enjoys Thursday Night Football, has a great week, and remember, deep breath, everyone. It'll be okay.
Keep calm.
Carry on.